Welcome to Teachucha Centro Cultural and Bookstore. My name is Michael Centeno. I'm the executive director here for Teachuchas. I'm really excited to be introducing our guest for today. I started volunteering with the organization 20 years ago, and what I started to do was I started to host and curate a weekly film series where we would screen movies and documentaries. And back in 2003, we screened and Charley over for his documentary Soldados, Chicano in Viet Nam, that went on to win various awards of produced on PBS. And we had him over several times just to bring him back a couple times and talk about his books and his other projects. So we're really excited to bring him back today and learn about where he's at with his project, now a film in production. So to give you a little background on Charley, he's a native of Corcoran, a small agricultural community in the San Joaquin Valley of California. He served in the Viet Nam War as an infantry sergeant and was awarded the Purple Heart and Bronze Star Medal. He taught college for 15 years before beginning his writing and publishing career. He published his award-winning book Soldados, Chicanos in Viet Nam in 1990. He also directed and produced a documentary of the same name that aired nationally on PBS in 2003. He has also written a Viet Nam War novel, Dogs from Illusion, that is currently in pre-production for the feature film of the same name. The novel and the film are about the experiences of 3 teenage Chicano soldiers, Mangas, and Chuco in Vietnam. This is the first feature film about Chicanos in war. So if we could have a big round of applause for Charley Trujillo.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. It's always a pleasure being here at Teachuchas. It's been a while, and I guess we're all readjusting with COVID and everything, so I'm really happy to be here, and thank you, Karen and Michael and Luis for having me here. And yeah, today I want to present what my latest project is, my feature film, Dogs from Illusion, which is based on my novel, Dogs from Illusion, and which I will be reissuing probably by the end of summer, and I'm rewriting it, and it's all going to be in code switching. It's going to be in what they call Spanglish, but in linguistics it's called code switching. So as far as I know, and I've been in Chicano studies for 50-some years now. Since I came back from Vietnam, I went to UC Berkeley and to San Jose State in Chicano studies, and I'm a professor of Chicano studies for a number of years. And that I know of, no one has written a novel using Chicano code switching. I mean, there is some poetry written, but a whole novel that I know of, because for the most part, it is a spoken language. It's not a written language. So now, in terms of, at least, shall I say, symbolically, it's kind of like a Chicano cultural nationalism, in that we are establishing a certain type of language that many of us speak. Of course, not everybody speaks so-called Spanglish, but either they're two extremes for the most part in terms of language dominant. Being language dominant is Spanish, monolingual Spanish and monolingual English, and points in between, right? So I'm going to do the points in between when we mix it. So I hope you will tune in, and maybe I can come back when I finish that novel, and when I rewrite the novel. But for right now, what I'm doing is I'm trying to make this feature film, the first feature film of Chicanos in war. There have been, of course, Chicanos portrayed in other films, but very, very sparse. Not many roles, and maybe Trini Lopez, I believe, or Ricardo Montalban in the past. John Leguizamo, I think his name is, that actor. He played a Latino. Robert Beltran in Latino, the movie in the 1980s. But for the most part, but that one did feature Robert Beltran. But that was about a Chicano Green Beret captain who went to go fight against with the Contras, against the Sandinistas. So a very good movie, but at the same time, it wasn't about like the war like Vietnam or World War II. And this guy was on the Contra side. So anyway, And then when they do show the Chicanos and other Latinos, they're the first ones killed, right away. Cleaning ropes in the Dirty Dozen. I said, he's going to be the first one who's killed. Yeah, sure enough, they do away with these guys. Or they'll show you praying and being superstitious and not very, shall we say, not very assertive people, docile. And that also comes along with the Westerns back in the day, in terms of Hollywood, or what I call Gringowood. And so all these stereotypes. So I want to, shall we say, portray Chicanos. In this case, I would say Chicanos too, but for the most part, the war was fought by the males. Okay, even though, of course, the families also suffered from the war, as you will see in my documentary that I made for PBS, Soldados, Chicanos in Vietnam, where I also include the families. But this one is basically about the soldiers themselves. And as one Hollywood writer told me, you show that I show Chicanos warts and all. It's not just the good guys against the bad guys. It's, we're actually real people with our ups and downs, and then, of course, everybody's an individual as well. Okay, so these three guys are good camaradas, but they're also very different, okay, in their political thinking. One of them actually is a pathological patriot, okay? But in this movie, one of the things that I do have is very different, not only about Chicanos, but I have one of the characters that is the nemesis of one of the dogs, Ese, is a character that I created. Her name is Mao Bao. It means leopard cat. And she is based on some Viet Cong or Viet Cong resistance. She was fighting for her land. One of the dogs kills her brother. The Americans kill her family. And so I show her side of what she's fighting for. And it's actually based on real women. What I tell some of my women friends is, imagine her, what she is like a Vietnamese Adelita, okay, but she's a revolutionary, okay. So I think that's also very different. We'll see why she's fighting. She's just not a brainwashed communist or anything. Actually, she's not even a communist. She just wants to work her land, okay. So I present that as well. I also present the racism within the military. You have to defend yourself against the military because they'll get you killed as well. Okay, so then many parts of the, shall we say, the realities of the Viet Nam War, the underbelly. And one scene that I have, I'm really excited about, is we get to kill John Wayne for once. Okay, you know how many Mexicans he's killed and Indians in the movies? Well, we're going to get him this time. Okay. I go, oh, how can you do that, right? But anyway, so, we, the production company, Quixote Productions and Falcon Pictures, we control our narrative. We are an independent production, or we're going to make an independent production, and we need to make the money, and we control what we say. Okay, the audience is there, the lead is there. We've done our homework. That we have in terms of business, we have a very good product that can be very profitable. Okay, and that way, I believe in Chicano and Chicana self-determination. We should start making our own films and our own books. That's why I have Choose My House. So hopefully, I can start a base for that type of production. And it's not just about me, but our whole communities throughout the country. Anyway, I can get more into the film as I go along. If we can watch the trailer, and then I'll have a few words, and then maybe you can ask me some questions, and that would help me out in explaining certain things that I'm doing. Ready? Yes, sir.
apures, Roro. We won't let those dudes get to you, carnal.
Bueno, cinco, carnal.
Vas a ver. Los choppers are coming with my father to help us. Cuando llegan, we're gonna get tequila, buena gripa, y tamales.
¿Tamales? No hay tamales en Vietnam, pendejo.
See, and I still have them. And remember, no te apures, Roro. We won't let those dudes get to you, carnal.
Me duele un chingo, carnal.
Vas a ver. Los choppers are coming con más vatos to help us. Y cuando llegan, we're gonna get tequila, buena gripa, y tamales.
¿Tamales? No hay tamales en Vietnam, pendejo.
See, and I still have them. And remember, las agotas de nena that's waiting for you, Tijuana.
Chíngate, pocho. ¿Cómo sabes que nena es nalgona?
You've only shown us a pinche picture 1,000 times, vato. Sing a song. Eso te ayuda.
¿Estás pendejo? Es que me duele un chingo, carnal.
It's a fucking woman.
Don't bye.
This is male bow. Leopard cat. Big rewards for her from the Vietnamese government. She's the Gao's #1 sniper.
You get the honors, knucklehead.
What honors?
Tell him, Dago.
To kill the bitch.
Kill her? That's against the Geneva Convention, Dago. We can't kill one of the prisoners.
You hear that shit, Neckbone?
Geneva? Fucking convention? This ain't the real world essay. Don't mean nothing. It's a non, baby. Tell them, 3 Bears.
Kill the bitch. You ain't one of us.
Hurry. The Viet Gao know we are here.
Bro, I don't know what's worse, the smell of my hunger. It's been 3 days since I ate anything. I sure could use a bowl of menudo right now.
Shut your pothole, Mangas. Oh shit, here they come again. Hey, we gotta get ammo and a radio off of some of those dead GIs.
I see one with the radio. That's another one with the ammo belts. I think I can get to them.
Okay, go for it. I'll cover you, go!
Pero quiero que no me llores por mi mamisita. Solo quiero que tú veas mi corazón. Y yo te digo la verdad, que yo te quiero, que yo todo te llevaré en mi corazón para Vietnam.
Nane Hernandez, I'm not Hernandez, but Nane Alejandres. He's a Vietnam veteran, and he let us use 10 acres of the retreat that he has there with Barrios Unidos. So that's one way in which we're going to try to make this film, is to get people like Nane who have property or in-kind type of donations like that to make our film. We need about $1 million, which by Hollywood standards, I mean, they spend more on catering or costumes than that for a lot of these films. And as I said, there is a large audience that's not being addressed, or at least the films. According to studies, 20 to 25% of those movie-going audience, or of the movie-going audience, or of the streaming, the people who watch online, the streaming services, Netflix, Amazon, all that, is 20 to 25% Latino. That's the term that they use. I don't get stuck on terms. As long as we know which demographics we are speaking about. And so that's a lot of the market is not being met. But of course they'll tell you, oh, we don't have enough Chicanos or Latinos in the movies and Chicanas and that. And they say, well, I got one. Well, we just can't seem to find anybody, and that kind of stuff. But so that's why just when I first began my first book, Soldados, it is because no one would publish it. I got turned down by, I think, 90, 100 publishers. And there was, I think, might have been one book that was written about Chicanos in Vietnam, and that was Roy Benavides, The Three Wars of Roy Benavides. But, so I took it upon myself I said, well, it looks like I have to do it. I quit my teaching job, and I've been publishing ever since, except I took about a 5-year hiatus, just trying to make film, but I'm back into publishing again. And then I also wrote a novel, A Dog from Illusion, and I'm also writing another novel now, a fictional memoir. It's called The Real Life of a Dead Chicano, Patas de Perro. And that one, I haven't decided if I'm going to write it all in code switching, but that's for later. I hopefully get it out in a couple of years or a year and a half or something. But anyway, so this is what I'm trying to do. Just as I found out with my books and the other works that I've done, the documentary, you just have to do it ourselves. I just have to do it myself. Part of it's not a necessity because I've been forced to. But now, in certain ways, it seems to, in the long run, hopefully it's better because, and then as Chicanos and Chicanas, as I mentioned, we need to control our own means and modes of our intellectual and artistic production. Okay, there's a lot of books that are written about Latinos and Chicanos too. Well, a lot compared to 50 years ago. But who owns those companies? Who's really making the money off our products and the movies? And it's not us in terms of, I could be that presumptuous. It's not the Chicanos or Chicanos who own our own productions. But of course, it's okay with the writers, I mean, and the actors and all that. Of course, you have to go with what you can with the mainstream. But I've been forced to go outside the mainstream. So hopefully I can get enough support from the community. We have like a 5-pronged strategy on how to raise this money. So also, if you notice in the trailer that we have a multi-ethnic cast. Even though the main guys are Chicanos, we have Oki, we have Neckbone, we have different people. We have a Puerto Rican soldier, we have a Native American soldier. Let's mix it up because that's the way the war was. It's just that it's the perspective of these 3 young Chicanos and that go on this odyssey, on this trip to the journey to Vietnam. And as you can tell there in the trailer, when the guy says, "This is not the real world," that's what the soldiers, at least in the infantry, would say when we get back to the world. That was not the world. Everything turns upside down. Okay, the values, the morality turns upside down. Thou shalt not kill, but now thou shalt kill. Things of this sort, And then why are you fighting? Why are you going to lose your life? Why are all these people getting destroyed? What about the children? All these other things that are going into war. And one of the things that I hope that people will take from this war or from this movie about war is that the realities and the terrible consequences of war that happens, that it inflicts on the people's souls and their spirits, and of course the economic as well. But I'll also show it from a Vietnamese perspective. So see how they have to struggle themselves. Okay, and in this case, these are 3 Chicano farm workers, and here they're going to go fight other farm workers. I make that pretty subtle, but it's there in the film. Because Mao Bao is a farm worker. They both start working. When the first scenes, Mao Bao is working in the fields, and so are the dogs. And then they meet. Okay, so I have different things of that sort in the film. I call it it's a picaresque. It's based on a picaresque novel, un pícaro. It's an old Spanish. The origins of that literature genre is by I think the first book, 1560s, something of that sort. Lazarillo de Tormes was the first picaresque novel, and so it's a satire, poking fun at society, humor. I use a lot of humor and especially satire, and so it's also like based on the Iliad, like Achilles. They go to the war and their boys and what they go through, okay. And when they get back, you'll see that they change a tremendous amount. By the time they get back, they left it. They're 19 years old. They come back like 40-year-old men in their minds and what they've gone through. But it's very common for these soldiers of all ethnicities. So it's not, even though it's about Chicano, but it's also about the human experience. Okay, so it's just using the Chicanos as a way of looking at the world. So I'm gonna call this if I have my druthers, I'm gonna call it a domestic foreign film. Okay, because we're domestic, but yet I'm considered foreign. And they say, well, what do you mean foreign? Well, for example, I speak Spanish, a foreign language. We're still suspect as being foreign. We're still the permanent immigrants, regardless of how long our families have been here in what is now the United States. We have I live in San Jose, founded by Mexicans in 1777. Right? People tend to forget that Los Angeles, San Antonio. So we've been here for a really long time, but yet we're still considered foreign in many ways. So also, I think one word would describe this film is disturbing. And once after the audience sees this, not that how can I say? I think they'll begin to understand why people have PTSD, for example. Maybe the audience themselves, what we're going to put on, at least for marketing, we are not responsible for your post-traumatic stress disorder after you see this film. Okay, because hopefully it will be as close as I can get to for the audience to find out what the realities of going through a war. Even though it's almost impossible to do so, at least you can get a good idea, rather than just heroes, right? They go over there and fight and see all these pyrotechnics things, and of course the good guys win and they come home and they're very happy and blah blah blah, right? So that's not the way things are. You can ask a lot of veterans, especially the ones with PTSD, if they think that I'm inaccurate in saying that. Okay, does anyone have a question? Or the audience there?
I do.
Yes.
After seeing your trailer, I'm kind of interested, to know, your thoughts on, how do you feel the audience is supposed to, what are you hoping that the audiences take away from these characters and, their interactions with each other? Because for me, seeing the trailer, it's about the men, but I felt automatically very uncomfortable with the male characters, because I was put in a place where I felt concerned for the woman's safety, right? The woman on the ground. But I know that the men are kind of framed as the main characters. So I'm kind of curious, you said that you show the ugly parts and whatnot. like warts and all. So I guess I'm just kind of curious, like how you feel like the audience, and of course I haven't seen the whole thing, so I don't know like what happens, but like I'm kind of curious about that balance of like, okay, like maybe the main characters are like in this really ugly situation, right, where like it brings out the worst in people, and like how the audience can kind of come away from that with like that understanding that like everyone is like just fighting, right? That lady's fighting, the men are fighting. I hope that makes sense.
I really, there was a lot of parts there that you be a little bit more definitive of what, or a little bit more focused of what you're asking.
Yeah, I actually don't know if I can. It's okay. I mean, it's just something I have to think about.
Okay. Well, one of the things here is that most of the wars and how we're, because, so we say movies are, especially the Hollywood type movies, and we live in this society, are basically, how can I tell you, they show you the ugliness of war. War is hell, and the suffering of the soldiers and things of that sort. Heroes, the good guys, right? And the bad guys, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, okay, that helped me focus my question. Like,
okay.
Are we supposed to see, like, are we supposed to put it into good guys and bad guys? Because, like...
No.
Okay.
Oh, I mean, you can do it any way the audience wants. I mean, I'm showing what, as many perspectives as I can, and maybe the audience can see that these guys, they come from a small town, and even then, they're having problems with racism. One of them gets beat up by the police, and the other one, and he also gets beat up by his homeboys. Okay, but when they go over there, and you'll see what the situation in which they were in. So I think the audience can begin to understand, well, what would I do in that situation if I was thrust into that situation? Okay, and as this guy say, this is not the world. Your morality, your ethics is all turned upside down. Okay, and so we can see the good or the bad, but it's not just good and bad. I guess I like the title of that book, Beyond Good and Evil. Okay, that type of idea. And there's also in many of the wars, as I was saying, about heroes and all that. But I also depict in these type of wars, or any war, but this one in particular was a very racist war. It was a war against the Vietnamese that they used the G word. I use those racist terms because they trained us like that, to hate these Vietnamese, to hate the Iraqis, because as far as I'm concerned, there is no cause, so they fabricate an enemy. And they're lesser people, they're evil, they're communists, they're terrorists, they're this kind of stuff. And so that dehumanizes people, and it allows you to kill easier. And also the sexism, a tremendous amount of sexism against the Vietnamese women. We were trained in that way in terms of they're not human. Their anatomy is not even the same. Their vaginas are in a different position than round-eyed women. The little kids stomp them before they grow, and that's something serious. Okay, so I show that type of issue, of those type of issues in a war. So it's not just the good and the bad, but what really happens, and then as I said, people's spirits and their souls when you go to a war. Yes, sir.
Getting back to that Mao bomb, there was actually a woman sniper that the U.S. was after.
Yeah, Apache.
I can't remember what
her name. They called her Apache.
Well, when she would actually either she was a good sniper. If she would capture a U.S. soldier, she would skin him.
Yeah.
So there was a sniper, a Marine from the U.S., White Feather. I can't remember his name right now.
Yeah, Carlos.
Hathcock.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
Marine. Yeah.
In fact, he's the one that shot her when she was.
Yeah.
He had snuck up on her. Well, it took him this sniper, he'd go out there, he'd go maybe 1,500 yards. It would take him maybe a day or 2 days just to move slowly.
Yeah, you could read about him.
And the Vietnamese would almost...
Yeah, you could look him up on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's certainly...
But the thing I'm getting to is that he popped her off though.
Yeah?
Yeah, he shot her. He shot her.
Yeah.
And then he put another round in her just for good...
Right. Well, see, that's the good guy and the bad guy.
Yeah.
But do they show, like, if you read the book called Kill Anything That Moves by Matt Taibbi, they show, like, the way they talk about the Apache, this Apache woman. She's not really loosely based on her. She's based on some other women that I read about. But, yeah, she could be one of those. But they just show her, right? They just talk about her. Like, you look at Wikipedia, and that, you know, Carlos is the good guy, and she's the bad person. And look what she does. But do you know what the United States did to them?
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's the thing. They don't show that part. Why? I mean, they had those prisons that they had, the South Vietnamese. I mean, they killed thousands and thousands of innocent people in those cages that they had. Of course, we had the Hanoi Hilton. So, you know, remember, as I told you, it's just like back and forth, like who's really the good guys, who's really the bad guys. And, you know, so, but usually it's just the good guys, right, for these guys on this side. And I was supposedly on that side, well, I was on that side too, that they say we're the good guys, right? Yeah, but I'm going to show what the Vietnamese perspective of why they were doing it. I mean, there was a guy, I forget his name, is Elder or Adair or something of that sort, in that book, Matt Taibbi, and you can look this guy up if you email me, or I'll have my, you go to my website, I forget his name, but he was called the Butcher of Baghdad. I mean, that guy was a real butcher in the 9th Infantry Division, 1968, I think, or something of that sort. I mean, they were just slaughtering Vietnamese, and My Lai, okay? So we were all part of that. But then, of course, you know, I mean, you know, I lost a lot of buddies over there. I lost part of my body. So, you know, it's not, I don't take saying these things very easily. But to me, I have to take a more objective perspective as to what was really going on. And hopefully people will think seriously about going to war, because we live in a very warlike society. For example, if you look at the history of the formation of the United States as a nation state, every generation has a war. Since the settlers, they call them the settlers, the pilgrims. Of course, we can call them the invaders as well, but that's a different thing, you know, in terms of the semantics that we use. When they came here, and of course, there are people who were fighting before that too. I mean, it just seems to be a human type of endeavor that people have gone around killing one another. But we're talking about the development of this nation state here. Constant warfare with the native people, then the War of 1777, the Revolutionary War, War of 1812 against England and Canada, and then, of course, the Alamo, 1836, and then the Mexican War, 1846 to 48, and then the Civil War, of course, 1861 or 65. And then we have the Spanish-American War, 1898. And then we have World War II, 1917, 1918. And then we have the Korean War. And then in 1950, then we have the Vietnam War, in 1965 to 73. And then we have Afghanistan and Iraq, and constant interventions in other countries in Central America against the Contras, invading Haiti with that gunboat diplomacy in the past. So you can see that we live in a very war type of society and economy with all the wars. So every generation that we are already programmed to go to war. Okay, right now, again, Ukraine now. All right, and then in Syria, so constant warfare, and of course, who is some of the people that they send? If not the poor people, the working class people, for the most part, to do that. And as far as I'm concerned, now that I've studied more, We were colonial soldiers. We were like, what the colonial powers used to go fight their wars, like the people from India who fought in World War I and World War II for the English, the African nations or people who were colonized by the French and the English also fought in World War I and World War II. They have used us to go fight the wars, and Chicanos as well. For example, Chicanos have served in every war that the United States has fought. And that we've actually fought against them too, in 1846 to 1848. Okay, so with the Mexican War or the Mexican-American War, and so we have been sent. There were Chicanos in the Civil War, for example. Some fought for the South, especially those from Texas, and some fought for the North. So there were Chicano Confederate soldiers. Read a book called what's that? Vaqueros in Blue and Gray. Yeah, Vaqueros in Blue and Gray. And that one talks about Chicano soldiers, especially those soldiers in Texas, because Texas was a slave state. Some of them served in the Confederacy. And some people, say, wow, man, they actually fought for the South? I mean, the racist slave masters? Yes, but then remember, too, how they used us, not just the Chicanos, but the blacks and the Native Americans. But remember, they also had the Buffalo Soldiers. Have you heard of the Buffalo Soldiers? Who were they fighting against, if not the Native people? Okay, so you can see, so I'm not trying to put blame or make anybody feel bad about these things, but you see how, as far as I'm concerned, they use us to go fight other brown people or black people. And so I also want people to understand those types of things as well. But again, in kind of way that hurts my marketing because they want to just see heroes and all this type of glory and patriots, and that's simple, but it's not. Yes, sir.
For most people, the trailer you showed is just a movie, but to me, the second it started, I heard that noise, the noise right away, I'm still shaking.
Yeah.
And I was telling my brother here that the sound of the helicopter before the blades,
yeah.
Oh, man, and that's the first thing I heard right there. It must have not been a helicopter, but man, I'm still shaking, you have to be there and experience something like that to understand what's happening there. And as far as the people in Vietnam, I went back to Vietnam with my wife, 2017, and they're some of the most beautiful people. Everybody was so friendly and helping us with everything, and I was thinking, why were we here? What were we doing there? Killing all these people.
Destroying the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I want to show through this film is the realities of war, what it does to us, and even now, I mean, 52 years later, I know about several guys who've died from Agent Orange. I'm still affected by Agent Orange. If you watch my documentary, which it's on YouTube, somebody pirated the documentary, Soldados, Chicanos in Viet Nam. It's on YouTube, and it's in my name, Charley Trujillo. It's not the best version, but it's there basically. But some of the things aren't as good as the original PBS one. But it's the same story. Anyway. The quality is a little lower, and you'll see there that it affected the families as well. And like one mother, she was waiting for her son, my friend Jose Barrera, and she didn't see him in the coffin, so she waited for about 30 years for him, because she never saw him. Every day she look out the window or look out the door, and maybe her son was coming home. Right? I had another friend who was killed, Julian Marin, and they never saw him in the box because he was so blown up. He was 19 years old, and they had to bring the priest because he would show up. They would see him at night in his spirit, and they had to bring in the priest to bless the house so he could be at peace. And those moms, I knew them personally. They were never the same again. Those mothers were the whole families were never the same again, especially since they never saw them in the box and faraway land. So it affects, the families, the moms. My mom had a lot of problems, and I created a lot of problems for her too, in some of the relationships that I've had outside my family.
What it is too, it's something that never goes away.
No, it doesn't go away.
See, there's doctors say that they can cure PTSD, but you can't.
No, what?
It's there.
It's a difficult one, but then again, as men, Chicanos especially, somos vatos, los hombres no lloran, suck it in, you must be weak. Yeah, well, give me another beer and I'll go away, that kind of stuff. And give me unos tiquelazos o algo, tú sabes. So, this affects our communities and I mean, 3 million Vietnamese were killed. I mean, don't forget about them. How about the wall for them? Right? And it's the children actually in these wars who suffer the most. It's the children and the women, the civilians who die more than the soldiers. Okay, we tend to forget that as well. For example, in the 1990s, when they were the sanctions against Iraq, under the Clinton administration, and that Madame Albright, I believe, she just passed away. I think she was a Secretary of State at the time when they asked her. You can see it on YouTube. They said that the UN, something to the effect that the UN said that, or reported that 500,000 children died because of the sanctions, because they couldn't get medical attention and medical drugs and food and the shortages and malnutrition and all that. 500,000, they estimate that 500,000 children died. And do you remember what she said? You can watch it on YouTube. It was worth it. 500,000 children. It was worth it. Now, how can you? Wow, man, that's pretty bad. Okay, or in Afghanistan, what they're doing now, in terms of what they're starving them to death. There's big famines. I mean, not famines, but I'm not sure if there's a famine, but they are running out of food because they froze the money, so they're starving them, basically. And the children and the women are the ones who suffer the most. Okay. Also, what they're doing they're bombing Yemen using arms, with the Saudis, and they're U.S.-made bombs and missiles. And then all of a sudden, like with Ukraine, they give them $40 billion. And who makes that money? The military-industrial complex makes that money. And they're happy. And then in terms of economics. So we have those type of things. And but then again, I just read, I think yesterday, they're going to cut out food programs for the kids, right? Lunch programs. They have no money, but they got $40 billion to make more arms. Okay, I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. So you can see, well, anyway, I feel that I have to say these things. But at the same time, when I produce, like if you watch if you read Soldados or you watch my documentary, you will see that because I believe like this does not mean that I do not allow for other thinking, and especially in the book and in the documentary, I got the other soldiers and veterans. I let them speak their piece as well. Some of them are fascists actually. You have friends or family that are Trump supporters, Chicanos, right? That kind. I let them talk too. It's only right because we all don't think the same. Okay, so I do present that and let the audience themselves make up their own mind. But I will tell you what I think too. Okay, so anyway, are there any other questions?
What's your timeline for the film?
For the film, our timeline is if we got some kind of monies right now, we're ready. I've written the screenplay; it's ready. We have the whole production company. We could, let's say we got I don't know, maybe $200,000 right now or $500,000 right now, which is very doable because there's a lot of gente with money out there, and we're also doing the grassroots thing. We're doing a TikTok campaign. I think on one of the videos that I made, we got 500,000 within the last 2 weeks when I'm speaking. And through that way, we're going to have something like, if people want to donate $5, it'll be on TikTok and on my Facebook. In about a week or two, we'll have a whole sequence of videos that we're going to be putting on. And you'll be able to donate $5 to have so when the film comes out, you'll have a ticket, you know. Also, middle type of investors will have an LLC, a limited liability corporation, where people can invest $1,000, $5,000. Because, you know, I know not all Chicanos are poor and Chicanos. Not everybody's poor. Okay, they act like they are, but of course they are. We do have a lot of, you know, income inequality. But, you know, there's many Chicanos, middle class ones. I have friends that play the stock market, right? How many? $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. Oh, I just lost some money, blah, 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 right? Well, invested in this, and it'll be a very solid program that we'll have, you know, through the regular channels.
So you're going to be launching that next week, you said?
Excuse me?
You're going to be launching that next week, or people could donate?
Within a couple of weeks, yes, we have a timeline. Probably in about 2 or 3 weeks, it'll be on my social media. We're working from that angle, and then of course I've also talked to some Hollywood producers, type of producers, and they're looking at it because you know, we are at least we're projecting. Hopefully, we can, by the time we finish this campaign, 6-week campaign on social media, we hope to have 2 or 3 million views. It seems like we're going towards that, but I don't know. But that already shows you that there's a big need, because I've been getting many questions and comments on the stuff that I put on YouTube about this project, and I'm not surprised, but it affected our community so much because we were overrepresented in that war. And for some strange reason, we did not need affirmative action, okay, in that war. We were overrepresented. We've done our part, and yet we do not get recognized, which I have some things about being recognized, or the idea of being recognized. I really don't need their recognition, but that we do participate in history is what's important for me, because it seems like we're an ahistorical people. Yes?
That's what I want to say. We are represented in history, but we don't get to read about it, or it's not talked about.
No, we participate in history.
You know, we are participating, but I mean, history is only shown through a certain lens in our country, and that's why I think stories like what you're telling is really important, because it's going to offer a different perspective of a historical event, and I think that's very, very important.
Yeah, so you know, it's history from this cultural group's point of view, and that we do participate in history, but then we're just part of history like everybody else. Okay, so, and it's also in terms of story, it's universal. Okay, we have different elements in the script itself. For me, I would really, you know, even though I have to do all this, my partners and I, my associates, we have to try to get this money, so I have to talk about that. But I just want to get to make the movie, man. You know, I want to get to every scene. You know, I got, you know, one of the things that I'm excited that the music is how you draw different ethnic groups. We'll have a little bit of Little Joe. We'll have a little bit of James Brown. We'll have a little bit of Merle Haggard. You know, rock and roll. You know, we'll have all those elements. A little bit of corridos de Pancho Villa. You know, and I want to really get into that stuff where I can place all those things and, you know, get into the art of making a film. But I have to deal with the business thing, you know, and trying to raise the funds, which is okay. But I just really want to get into making the movie, but I'll have to wait a few months. But I think we can, if we got, let's say we got some money in a couple of months, we can be ready. We're ready to go. We already did this. That's what we did with this trailer. We had 55 people on set, and we shot it all in one day, from 6 in the morning to 6 at night. Okay, and of course everybody was a volunteer. Except for the weapons guy, we had to pay him and the uniform. But everybody was a volunteer. And also, what I'm excited about this movie is that we'll be able to bring up new actors, different actors. We might be able to get some A-listers, who knows? But it's I want to we could start grooming people who are coming up. We want people who are 19, 20 years old. And I do have one Chicana in there, that she's one of the main characters. Her name is Chanclas. She, no one has proper names throughout the film. And Chanclas is S's girlfriend. And she appears to him every so often because she becomes, we use a magic surrealism. I don't use it too much, but she appears to him and she is his conscience. She's questions him what he's doing there. Right, so I bring her in too. That one, she's gonna be, I'm having a hard time placing her without, stereotypes or things of that sort. But yeah, I'm sure that if I get the right actress, we can work Chanclas out. And of course, Mao Bao. Okay, so she's also, like I said, she's Vietnamese Adelita. Of course, some people say, well, look what you're showing, you're a traitor or what, Well, I'll tell you what, when I was in Vietnam, there would have been no question about even shoot her or not. I mean, people just did that. I mean, that was no question about it. Okay, that was. But for this guy, I just showed it that it was a question for him. Okay. Any other questions?
I do have a kind of question, an idea. My uncle was instrumental in developing the American Legion in Redlands. It was the first Latino Legion, and sometimes I talk to the guys here at the American Legion in San Fernando and the VFW. I know I went personally to leave out some of the flyers over there to let them know that you're going to be speaking, and I'm wondering if there's a way that we can reach out to them, and get their support for the movie and their donations.
Yes. That's what. One reason I'm doing this is here, and live. I'm glad they're live streaming it too. Is to get to. You can go on to my website, and we will have that information. Yes, I'm starting a campaign with. That's one of the strategies that we have with other veterans that are active to this day in their organizations, and gathering them to help, fund this movie. But sometimes, some of the veterans are pretty conservative, some of them. Mm-hmm. But I can't, that's okay. I mean, that's the way we think. As long as we know we have to, as long as we support this movie, because as I told you, the actual soldiers themselves, these characters, their politics are from left to right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I like to show, different perspectives. And then even the same person can sometimes be a really nice person, and then all of a sudden it turns into, the circumstance. So, yeah.
Also, I wanted to know how much you're going to talk about post-traumatic stress. Today we use that term. Years ago they used to use shell shock. Mm-hmm. And I witnessed that on behalf of my uncle, that it was the Korean War. And I remember him, after 1 or 2 years after he came home, that when he had a flashback, it lasted a long time, and it would take 4 or 5 guys to hold him down, and he relived every shooting. I was little, and I can remember his sounds of protecting, words of protection, to duck, to watch out, for coming from here, and I never forgot that. And how traumatic that was for me, I was a child, but for my uncle, who came back, he eventually was able to live with it somewhat, and the flashbacks were less and less, but it was really real, and he never ever forgot. You don't forget. I don't forget as a child. I don't forget the looks on the faces of my tias and my mother or my father trying to calm him down. Then I had another uncle my Uncle Vero, and he was also there. And his job was to pick up, as respectfully as he can, all the dead, all the deceased. As he could, he picked them up. He would put them in the truck. When he went into the war, he had all black hair. A couple years later, his hair was completely white. Then he would say, and he would tell us, because he relived it all the time, that bodies contract, and he's driving, and all of a sudden you'll see a body sit up, a leg up, and he lived, I guess, with the stereotype of the death and the fear and not knowing what was going to happen, and these people corpses would just contract and sit up. And I remember the family and the hurt and the pain that we all felt for him and how much we loved him. And we knew that this doesn't just happen to my uncle, but it happens to every soldier, every military person that is in any war. You know, I'm concerned here in the United States, but in any war.
Yes.
And
yeah.
that, I think we need to look at that as we address.
Yeah, well, you will, as I stated earlier, I mean, this film will not be about PTSD,
No.
but it will, I do address it, you know, if I had more time, I could address that. Of course, that's also a very big problem. But when you see the film, that's why I said you'll have a warning. We're not going to be responsible for your post-traumatic stress disorder. You'll get an idea of why these soldiers suffer this PTSD hopefully by when you watch this movie. You'll see the stress, the constant stress. I mean, I lived in the jungle for 9 months before I got wounded, and I think I spent I was out in the bush. I was in the infantry, which happens to a lot of guys. It's not just me, okay? But in this war, and in the Viet Nam War, is that I think I spent 4 days outside the jungle. The rest of the time we lived in the jungle. We lived in what they call free fire zones, kill anything that moves. And they would kill us too. And by the way, I am making, if you go on my website, a documentary on these 2 Chicano guys who went to Korea and went on a death march and lived 3 years in a Korean death march, death camp in 1950. You'll see it on choosemyhouse.com. You can watch that trailer that we have. And so yes, every war is very bad for the soldiers. But in this, you know what's happening now with the Iraq wars and Afghanistan wars is one area that I'm really interested, especially in terms of story and experience, but also academically, is the woman experience. Now more women are going to combat in Iraq and Afghanistan. I have met some, and that I think they even have more problems than the males, because the military is a male-orientated culture, and the women. I've talked to some. I talked to some 2 little kids one time, and I think in Pueblo, Colorado. I spoke to some junior high kids, really sweet kids, and I talked to them about war. Of course, I use certain language and certain ideas. And they were there, and they were sitting on the floor in the gym, and I asked them, this was when the Iraq War was going on, a little bit afterwards, actually. And a boy and a girl, they said, oh yeah, my mama and daddy, my mama was in the war. I said, well, have you seen how she's changed since she came back? She says, the little girl says, yeah, she's always looking for her gun. Right? You know, so it affects the families, the little kids, and it even affects you now, all these years, and the moms I was telling you. So I think what I'm trying to do with this film, because war, movies it's ideological. That's how we get, you know, they act like it's just harmless entertainment, and it's not. Okay? So, yes, I hope that people will get these, see a certain perspective of war that's not, it's a little bit very as realistic as I can get about it. Okay. Yes. One more.
What's your website again?
Monday?
Your website again?
Choosemyhouse.com. CHUSMA. Choosemyhouse.com. And chusma is an archaic Spanish word that meant galley slaves. That's the mob, the rabble, and the Mexican women. I mean chusma. I hook up the kids and stuff like that. Yes.
So kind of jumping off what you're talking about the experience as a woman. You mentioned Chaclas, the character who's the girlfriend of one of the soldiers. And I guess my question for you is because you know, Latina representation out there like can be not the best or not that much, you know. So my question for you is like, how are you going to like do Chanclas justice as a character when she solely exists within your world to be the conscience of a man? Like how, yeah.
Well, she's actually technically, I guess I'm glad you asked that. She's not technically his conscience. She questions it. She questions it, but it's actually him. But she's the one that appears to him, and she represents, you know, questioning. What are you doing here? He's actually questioning himself. Okay, so but I'm using her as a vehicle.
Yeah, and that's my issue is that you're using a woman as a vehicle for a man's development.
No. It's not like she's subservient.
Yeah, but her entire existence as a character is only to serve the character development of that male character. You know what I mean? Like.
Well, the thing is that in terms of that is that, but she's not a combatant. Okay, now my Ba was a combatant. Okay, but I'm using Chanclas to, you know, that actually in certain ways a woman's sensibility about war. Okay, you'd have to see the movie and then you tell me.
Okay.
Right, and you know, that's why I say I have to be really careful. But then again, that's the, unless I made her a combatant, but she wasn't a combatant. I think my sister was in the army during that time, but they were not combatants. So I'm just, I can't say I'm not, well, you say that, anyway, you'll have to see it and then we can talk. Yes. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
How long is the total time for the film? Sorry if I missed it in the beginning. And,
yeah, no. Okay.
Sorry, the follow-up question to that is, did you have a hard time deciding or having, because it seems like you're putting a lot of messages, a lot into this film. Like, was it a hard time trying to pack a lot of stuff into, I'm assuming it's going to be an hour and a half, 2 hour film?
Hour 40 minutes.
Hour 40 minutes.
Yeah, but that's always the problem that you have. I mean, how at a book or a movie, how do you? In this case, it's a 1 year period. How do you encapsulate 1 year in an hour and a half, or any movie, right? It can happen with 2-3 years. How do you encapsulate, or even a novel, you know, a lifetime in 200 pages? So it's always that problem. And then you really can't, like in a movie, you have limitations, for example, or you don't have smells. You know, you don't have touch. You know, so that's also going to be difficult in terms of telling a story and how you can feed it as a human being. So yeah, that's it. It'll be that's why you have structure. That's why you craft the movie and make it seem sensible within that period. Okay.
I have one more thing to say. Recently, my husband's Navy. My brother's a Marine and Air Force, and we have Army. We have a little family, a lot of military in our family. And oh no, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, I know. When we started, my husband found a CD of Joey's, and I remember when I had my soccer boys, and one wanted to go into the military, and this is during ISIS time. And so, and I looked at Chewy and said, Chewy, do you think that you can kill somebody? And he said, no. And I said, you're going to be taught how to kill. And then when we started listening to the Joeys and watching the guys do their cadence and everything else, then we're listening to the words, you know, about how strong they have to be and, you know, who the enemy is. And it's a whole CD, and that was just for the Marines. And just to let you know, my brother Dick, Marine, lifer, he's dying from Agent Orange. And now we have more guys who are dying from the new toxic chemicals that were put on some of the lands in Vietnam. And now the military has finally accepted that, yeah, this is a problem, and it is affecting more.
Yeah, I've been affected by health-wise. well with Agent Orange. Okay, and I had malaria 3 times. Okay, so that's pretty rough too. So anyway, okay. Yeah. Thank you very much for being here, and buy my book.
Thank you, Charlie. If you could, another round of applause for Charlie. Thank you for coming down.
Thank you.
We do have the book for sale if anybody's interested. And then, yeah, just check out choosemyhouse.com for more information, and folks can learn there about how to donate. So thank you again.
Thank you.
An announcement.
Yeah.
Earlier this morning, I was at my daughter's house. My little granddaughter was helping me outside with the pipe.